videos on 4v4, we made the point that kids can learn all the basic roles, tasks, and positions of the 11-a-side match at that level. They can learn how to play on the right, the left, ahead of the ball, behind the ball. They can be goal scorers, defenders, playmakers, whatever it is they need to learn in a general sense, they can do at that level. Now at 7 versus 7, we get to a new point in small-sided games where kids can learn much more than that. They can start to learn specific positions which they'll have presented to them and opportunities to play in 11-a-side. Now the first thing to concern yourself with at 7 versus 7 is whether you want to play with 2 or 3 lines. Now I've kind of implicated here or implied that there are lines at 4 versus 4 by using the names sweeper, midfielders, and top players. But that's not really true. They're not lines in the sense that they are in the full 11-a-side game. Instead, it's more of a shape that the kids maintain to give it some structure. So it's just semantics. Now, at 7 versus 7, kids are going to be coming to this form out of 4 versus 4 or 5 versus 5, something along those lines for the first time. The field that they're going to be getting to is, for them, going to be huge. So with the field players, and we'll address right now, that's our 7th player, the goalkeeper. For the field players, 2 players trying to defend across the width of the field is an enormous task. If one goes wide and leaves the other one in the center, there's a huge gap in between. If the second defender follows him, it leaves the center open. So 2 players have a tremendous problem covering not just the length, but the width of the field. So the way to solve that is to establish that the team has 3 players in the back. This is going to give you the most stable base to play from. Now if we have 3 in the back, that only leaves us with 3 players, the 3 field players, to use in any of the remaining lines. So one way is just establish a second line of 3 players at the top to attack. Now what can they learn from this relative to the 11-a-side game? Well, this picture here gives you actual wingers and a center forward. So what the kids are having a chance to learn is to play in the sense of the 4-3-3 or 3-4-3, where you're playing with real wingers and the center forward, so that these players have the opportunity to play 1 versus 1, to look for crosses, to go deep, to cut inside, where this player is going to have to play at times somewhat on their own and to create space, and they get that picture. Now another picture with 2 lines would be something like this 4-2. What are you learning in here? Well, here a lot of the learning in the back will be 2 outside back players. What do they get to learn? Well, because there are 4 players here, they will have some freedom to pick moments to go forward on their own and join in the attack. The reason they can do that is that if they go forward, there's still 3 players behind them. So you're still leaving your basic defensive structure, and these 3 players can cover until the player comes back. The 2 central players will be in the center of the field, be able to closely communicate, talk. They can work out. You go up, I stay back. Oh, the ball's on that side. I'll do this. Or maybe the personalities are such that you play with a marking player here, and this player, your job is to play in the gaps. These 2 players up top will now play as like twin strikers. There's a tremendous difference in playing this way and the way that we showed just a moment ago with the 3-player line, with the lone striker in the center and the 2 wingers. These players will not be having to go wide looking for crosses. Instead, they're going to be getting balls played out of the back and then combining on their own. It's essentially, you're looking at here, a 4-4-2 formation where either you have, think of the 4 midfielders to 2 strikers, or the 4 back players into 2 midfielders. Now, if we're going to change this to a 3-line system and maintain the stability of a back 3, you have what's called a Christmas tree of a back 3, 2 midfielders, and 1 player on top. This is a good system if you want the kids to learn counter-attacking soccer, where they play deep in their own half, let the opponents come, and then hit them on the breakaway. So it's a good system for counter-attacking soccer. Now we're going to take a quick look at another three-line system and just call this the pentagon with a central player. This is not a system that's recommended for youth soccer, and for a couple of reasons. Number one, these two players on the outside, their responsibility, the geographic area they have to cover, is corner flag to corner flag. That's a lot of work on those fields. They have to run and run and run. As soon as they take one run, two runs, they're physically exhausted, and now they're going to be constantly out of position when the ball's down there, and they're not going to be able to get back. It's going to create a lot of frustration. Another problem is that these two players, if they don't get any kind of support from these two, or this one, then they're going to be forced to just hoof it deep, because they're usually going to be outnumbered and under a lot of pressure. So they're going to be looking to play the ball deep, kick it, boot it long. We don't want it here. And now when these players become exhausted, this player is going to find it very hard to find anyone to combine with. This player, it's a tremendously complicated role for them to play in 7 versus 7. Now, how does this get adjusted at 8 versus 8? Well, we just took care of that problem. At 8 versus 8 now, we can play with the 3 players across the back. The amount of field that these two outside players have to cover has just been reduced dramatically. There aren't the gaps behind them. Furthermore, if these players do win a ball and get a chance to go forward, well, now there's enough cover for them to engage in the build-up and to be positive in what they're trying to do. Another system, keeping the 3 at the back and playing a 3-2-2. Now here's the 3-line system where you now have the 2 midfielders and the 2 top players. Here the problem is there really isn't any width that you're going to get. It's a very basic system for playing in the center of the field. But you can see here with the addition of one player from 7 versus 7 how much easier it is to go from a 2-line system to a 3-line system. Now one other variation on the 8v8 is to play something like this 4-3, where you're now going back to the wingers with a center forward. These 4 players playing in that diamond of 4v4 have the defensive responsibilities. The idea here is not to go out and try to win games at this level. The idea is to get a form of the game in 7 versus 7, whether it's a 4-3 or a 3-3-1 or a 3-2-2, that the kids can learn some of the specific positions, jobs, responsibilities, and pictures that they will see at the 11-a-side game.